Preparing and presenting Budget 2022 was possibly not an easy task for Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. It comes at a time when India is grappling with a third wave of COVID-19. Global situations don't seem to be very conducive. We don't know what's happening next, and inflation is hovering on the horizon. Having said that, was the budget able to deliver on its basic premise of steering a ship steadily towards whatever comes next? To get perspective on this, I'm joined today by Swaminathan Aiyar, Consulting Editor, ET Now. Sumant Sinha, Chairman and CEO, Renew Power, is with us on the show. I'm speaking with Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, Chairperson, Biocon, and Ashish Singhal, Founder and CEO of CoinSwitch. Considering cryptos have been the big headline coming out of the budget, it'll be interesting to hear his take as well. So welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us on this mega budget special on the India development debate. Mr. Aiyar, let me begin with getting your take, your overview. I remember our conversation before the budget, and you had talked about how you think this will be a politically inclined budget, a very electoral budget. Would it be safe to say that the finance minister has not given into that temptation?
Absolutely. So I was dead wrong. It happens from time to time. So it was absolutely not an election budget. It's a courageous gamble. She is risking high deficits and high inflation in order to make an all-out drive for growth. The idea that fast growth will then overcome a myriad other problems, employment, wages, GDP, all the allied things that have to be done. So it's a courageous gamble, but it's a gamble nevertheless. So cross your fingers.
Okay. It's a gamble also in the sense where not a massive allocation for health, not a massive, huge allocation for, farmers or for rural India, but a lot of talk, especially on green energy. So let me come to you next, Mr. Sinha. Do you think that the government has managed to say it will put its money where its mouth is? There is, of course, the PLI scheme and 19,500 set aside for solar power, etc. Is the commitment required to go beyond these announcements? What is your take on what this budget means for India's promises for climate change?
Well, first of all, Tamanna, the promises are quite sizable, and I'm glad that they are, because we need to do a lot to make sure that we deal with the climate change imperative. So that's one. The second thing is, I think you have to look at the government's program in totality, and the budget is but a small, sort of window into that program, and therefore you can't really look at the budget and say, infer from here what the program is, because we know that there's a lot that is actually going on now. Within the budget, there was a lot of mention about going green, about the climate change imperative, and so on. And I think that was very positive. Apart from the solar PLI scheme, which of course is terrific, that the government is allocating that 19,500 crores extra, which by the way means that the program is being increased by almost 4 to 5 times beyond what was originally committed. So it's a very sizable bet on trying to set up manufacturing capacities in India and establish India as an alternative manufacturing destination for not just solar panels in specific, but more broadly the clean economy in general and more globally. So I think it's really part of that bet. Now, in addition to that, there was a lot of, effort given to try to encourage batteries as well. We know, the government talked about, the finance minister talked about sovereign green bonds and so on. And we know that separately, within a few days, there's a national green hydrogen policy document that is coming out. So there are a lot of things in the works. And I think you have to look at the totality of what the government is doing on the green front and not just look at this specific budget, which, by the way, had several items within it for, in fact, encouraging and taking that whole effort forward. So I think in that sense, it was quite well done.
Okay, let me come to the piece about healthcare, and the assessment was that perhaps there would be another addition to how much India is willing to spend on healthcare, looking at the pandemic and its continuing impact. Ms. Shaw, what would be your take on this aspect? No major allocations to healthcare, and is that also coming from the confidence of a large part of the adult population getting at least one dose of the vaccine?
Yeah, I think we should look at the fact that, almost 75% of the adult population is double vaccinated. And I think with this, we need to open up the economy, because although there's been a lot of discussion on various channels about, the MSME, informal and services sectors being impacted, I think opening up the economy will actually revive that part of the growth as well. Now, coming to the investment in healthcare, I believe that, of course, you don't need to invest that much in vaccination anymore, because I think, we've done enough at this point in time. They still have budgeted 35,000 crores for FY22, up to FY22. And then beyond that, I think, you need to open it up for the private markets as well. I'm also quite, taken with the government's approach to digital healthcare and mental health, in fact, using digital telehealth consulting and things. And if you look at the way they've actually increased the budgetary outlay from roughly about 93,000 crores to 225,000 crores for Ayushman Bharat, I think all these, digital initiatives are initiatives in the right direction. And it's very clear to me that the government has averted the temptation of getting into populist measures and welfare doleouts in favor of investing in a digital economy, a digitally enabled economy, whether it's digital health, digital education, and digital governance. I think these are all good steps, because it sets us up in a very promising way towards that aim of being a very large $5 trillion economy.
The flip side of that is the criticism coming in today that this budget does not really address the need of those who have been hurting because of the pandemic. And let me take this back to Swami. The opposition coming in and saying, what did you give the middle class? What did you give, small businesses? Did you do enough for health? Did you do enough for education? Do you think that criticism will hurt? Or will we see more schemes rolled out outside the budget to address some of these concerns?
No, I don't think there is any problem at all with the budget not constantly giving giveaways and freebies all the time. That is not what a finance minister is supposed to do. In fact, there is a very strong case for virtue in stability in not constantly giving things away. There used to be a theory that it is essential for a finance minister to give away lots of freebies before a budget, because even if it makes no difference to the election, if you lose, you won't be blamed. Other people will be blamed. I'm glad that Nirmala Sitharaman has been instructed by Mr. Modi very clearly, look, freebies don't win elections. Populism doesn't win elections. Don't go for an election budget. Don't say, I have to do something for this class, I have to do something for this class. Go and present a sensible budget which will be growth-oriented and depend on growth to take care of a very large number of issues. As Kiran said just now, I mean, if you just open up the economy and have 8% growth, that will do infinitely more than saying another 2,000 crore subvention for this group, another 5,000 crore subsidy for that group. It is not these small little subventions and subsidies that will produce a buoyant economy and prosperity. You need the entire engine to be firing. And that is what she's aiming to do. But as Kiran said, this needs to be supplemented by state government saying, we will focus on reviving the economy rather than on the lockdowns. The lockdowns on balance have not been a good way to alleviate distress. They tend to create more distress than they actually solve. So I do hope the state governments will go along that line. So I think this is a good budget to the extent that it has not provided something for every little vote bank.
Yeah. What it has provided, though, is clarity, I would say, on a hotly contested topic. And let me bring in Ashish here. Ashish, the word coming out from everyone in the crypto space today is, well, so what if you're getting taxed at 30% and crypto assets are being treated almost like lotteries are? But the fact that we're being taxed means we exist. Are you taking away that silver lining today?
No, absolutely. And I see this as a very, very positive development overall, right? What it does for the industry, that it removes ambiguity. It signals that the government recognizes this industry. The regulatory guidance on tax from the government furthers the mainstreaming of this emerging asset class, right, which has seen over $6 billion worth of investments from Indians already, right? So it is the gateway for the future decentralization world, the Web 3.0, and we see it as a very positive step. Obviously, there are a lot of work to be done here. There need to be worked out in terms of taxation, maybe hoping that government would listen to the industry and maybe make it at par with other asset classes like security over time as well. But this is a very welcomed move overall from the industry perspective.
What is going to be the immediate impact though, Ashish? Because a bulk of investments being made and money being put into crypto exchanges and these accounts in India are small ticket sizes. And they are now suddenly going to be waking up to a situation where you not only pay a TDS, but you are taxed at 30%, no offset of any losses that you make. Do you think this will have a chilling effect on the kind of enthusiasm we have seen for crypto assets?
I hope not, because crypto investments, although are risky investments, but high reward investments, and we always see that as a risky asset class. People are investing for long term, right? And having tax at 30% on gains of crypto is not a bad start, right? Obviously, we would want the industry to be taxed at par, maybe as securities, having a long term and a short term distribution, and having follow through of tax and losses over the years as well. And hopefully this is just a start, and hopefully government recognizes that, works with the industry and try to make it more more easy for the crypto users and more adoptable as an industry itself, right? So I think this is a good move to start with, but obviously there are a lot of work to be done as we progress in the progression of crypto.
Okay, let me switch focus now to what I would say was the one big takeaway from the budget. When Swami says that this is a budget which is willing to spend money, bet on growth, some of it perhaps comes from the fact that they've increased the allocation for capex by 35% over 7.5 lakh crores. First question on this to Kiran Mazumdar Shaw. The hope is that this also spurs on private investment, animal spirits that has been lagging so far. Do you think that that will happen?
Obviously the signaling is good. It's very strong. I think all infrastructure projects, obviously the biggest deterrent is the gestational nature of implementing projects or even getting them started for that matter. So my view is, yes, it is directionally very, very promising, but whether it's imminent or whether it is mid to long term is really my view. I don't think it can happen overnight, but it will happen in time. So we have to give it a bit of time. So that is why I go back to my earlier statement that we need to open up the economy. And, it is certain, the informal sector is certainly stressed, and this obviously investment in infra projects is likely to spur job creation, and it is going to be only good for the construction industry all around. So that would also lead to further, it can have another multiplier effect. But how soon can that happen is really my concern. I don't think it can happen immediately. But if the signals are strong, you can start seeing a revival of the animal spirits, as you put it.
Let me take that question to Mr. Sinha. Now, when you hear from industry, what they're saying is that we will invest more money, we will expand when we know that consumption is back. And that has been sort of a missing piece of the puzzle. Do you think that the budget is showing the right direction, at least in terms of intent, where the government is ready to take on the role of being the big spender?
Yeah, look, I think so. Obviously, the government is one of the spenders, and it's a very big part. But at the same time, you also need consumer spending to pick up as well. Now, as far as consumer spending is concerned, I think the government again has taken the bet that while it's going for growth, as Swami was saying, within that, it's not going to go for demand-led growth. It's going to go really for the investment-driven growth. And I think that's another bold bet that they have taken, which is really to try to improve or increase the productive capacity of the economy. and by doing more on the supply side, eventually let that trickle down into creating demand as well, and more jobs in the bargain also, without leading to hopefully therefore inflation and so on, which might be an outcome of a demand-led growth where the capacity creation does not go in parallel. So I think it's an interesting I think bet, and frankly, it's not something that they've taken just the first time. This is something that they've been pushing as an agenda for quite some time, and I think it stems from the fact that Mr. Modi sees himself as a builder. He's a builder of modern India, and therefore he wants to build roads. He wants to build clean energy capacity. He wants to build the digital infrastructure, and I think he likes that tangible building aspect. I think it's part of really what his core philosophy is, and that's why you see budgets sort of hewing in that direction rather than into the giveaways and stoking demand by giving some people this, that, and the other. So I think that's really how he thinks, and that's the philosophy I think underlying all the budgets that we are seeing right now. And that's, by the way, quite it's fine with us as far as the corporate sector is concerned. I think that the corporate balance sheets have got delevered over the last few years. Banks have also got really much more healthier. So I think at least corporates are going to be willing to invest. Banks are going to be willing to also fund. And as long as the economy continues its growth momentum, I don't really see any issues as to why we should not have 8% growth, obviously the next year, but also in years after that, hopefully at a higher level.
Swami, let me just get a take from you on the sort of macro picture for the economy that is being clear. So the disinvestment target was pared down, perhaps to a more realistic goal. On the other hand, we missed the fiscal deficit target by a smidge for this year. It's 6.4% for next year, and we're sticking to the 4.5% goal by 2025. Do you think that's doable, or does it look optimistic?
Is this for me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Fiscal deficit. Given that the revenue was so buoyant, I mean, they boasted in the economic survey as to how they, in the first half of the year, there was, I think, 50-60% revenue growth compared to the previous year. Because of this huge buoyancy in revenue, we would have thought that instead of 6.8%, the deficit should come down to 6.1. The fact that it has still remained, in fact, it has exceeded and gone to 6.9 is a grave disappointment. The main reason, and this is the big failure of the budget, the main reason is the complete fiasco on asset sales and privatization. I mean, here you had a target of 1.78 trillion. You're ending up, they say maybe 78,000 crores this year. Even for next year, they are pulling their sights even lower to 68,000. Actually, these figures are very puzzling because I thought the LIC IPO alone was going to get 100,000 crores. So, I mean, does this mean they are going to pull the IPO? They're going to put it on ice? Because the figure doesn't seem to appear either in this year's privatization or next. But broadly speaking, again and again, the fisc is running into a problem because even if you do well on revenue, you are failing very seriously on asset sales. We had, for instance, this proposal to have private passenger trains, 109 trains, 151 routes. You put it to an auction and you got no bids. I mean, why is it that nobody is looking into why are these processes constantly failing? Why do they take so long? Whose head is going to roll if you have not set a particular target and said, look, if you don't do this, you have to tell me what is the right process. And if you can't do even that, you have to be kicked out and somebody else has to come in. But instead of overhauling the whole process, they seem to have thrown up their hands in resignation by reducing the asset sales next year to only 68,000 crores. Please remember, the national monetization pipeline was supposed to raise 6 lakh crores over 5 years for reinvestment in infrastructure. Now, if you just can't raise money, even of this kind of level, why can't you do it? You certainly thought you could do it. I mean, there are all kinds of private sales going on all the time. It doesn't take 2 years. I mean, look at your BPCL, Container Corporation, Shipping Corporation. We first heard about it 2 years ago. It's still not finished. Why should it take 2 years to privatize a company? Why should your IPO on LIC take more than 1 year? I mean, the processes are pathetically slow, and instead of reforming it, you are going on the thing of throwing up your hands and lowering your target for next year. So it seems to me that, there is a problem in revenue. One way or the other, the revenues are not rising fast enough for you to accelerate capex spending. If you need to do that, then you must have much, much higher asset sales. And instead of admitting failure and reforming that particular problem, there is not one word about it in the budget. This, to my mind, is the biggest failure. And if you are unable to revive asset sales, I'm afraid the future of capex spending, the future of this entire attempt to have investment-led growth, that will fail.
Right. So the big part of the puzzle, the big piece of the puzzle still remains to be revealed. Perhaps it's a case of setting lower targets and then exceeding, because the finance minister did talk about the LIC IPO coming soon. We might see some details as early as March. But all in all, I won't do the thing where I ask you all to rank the budget, but instead, let me ask you to summarize it in one line as a big takeaway. Kiran, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think this is a very decent budget. It's a very well thought out budget, and I think it is a bold budget in the sense it's just focused on growth.
Okay, I like those adjectives: decent, well thought of, and bold. Sumant, what would be your take?
You're mute.
Yeah, I think it's investment led and focusing on growth, and eschewing political compulsions. So I think all in all, quite good from that standpoint.
Swami, you would agree with that? What is your headline for this budget?
I will say a courageous gamble on capex and growth, but cowardice when it comes to privatization.
Okay, and Ashish, have you written your mental headline yet for the budget?
From the crypto side, I think it's a first step towards adoption to Web 3.0, which is a very, very welcomed step from this budget.
All right, I don't know if that's a leap of faith, whether that was an adoption of Web 3.0 or a red flag for investors, but that truly was the big takeaway. And also, we're all waiting to see what the digital rupee is all about. So the stories will continue to flow. But for today and for now, I want to thank all of you for joining us on the India Development Debate and helping us break down this budget.